Have you ever witnessed someone being treated unfairly just because of their skin color? Well, today, you're about to hear a story that will leave you speechless. It's about a racist restaurant manager who thought he could bully the wrong black woman. But what happens next will make you believe in the power of standing up for yourself. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories just like this one. Now, let's get into it. It was a sunny afternoon in Atlanta, Georgia, and Ava Johnson had just wrapped up a long day at work. Ava was a confident and successful lawyer in her early 30s, known for her sharp mind and even sharper sense of justice. She had spent her entire career fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves, and her clients loved her not just for her skills, but for her kindness. After a grueling day in court, Ava decided to treat herself to lunch at one of her favorite restaurants, Greenhaven Bistro. She had been there a few times before, and it was known for its cozy atmosphere and delicious food. But today, things were about to take a very different turn. Ava walked into the restaurant, her head held high, wearing a perfectly tailored suit and a warm, confident smile. The dining area was lively, filled with the chatter of diners, but it was far from packed. Her heels clicked softly against the polished floor as she approached the hostess stand, where a young woman stood with a nervous expression, her hands fidgeting with the edges of the reservation book. "Table for one, please," Ava said politely, her voice calm yet self-assured. The hostess opened her mouth to respond, but before a single word could escape, a harsh voice barked from behind the counter. "Wait a minute! We're full!" Ava turned toward the source of the interruption. A middle-aged man with graying hair and a stern, almost confrontational demeanor glared at her from behind the counter. His name tag glinted under the overhead light. Gary, manager. His tone wasn't just dismissive, it was cutting, almost daring her to question him. His eyes bore into her with a disdain that was impossible to ignore, as if her very presence offended him. Ava, keeping her composure, glanced around the room. At least 5 tables were visibly empty, their chairs neatly tucked in, their surfaces spotless and ready for guests. She raised an eyebrow, her voice steady but with an edge of incredulity. "It doesn't look full to me," she said, her words measured but pointed. Gary crossed his arms over his chest, his stance defiant. "Those tables are reserved," he said curtly, his eyes narrowing. "You'll have to leave." The young hostess shifted uncomfortably on her feet, her gaze darting between Ava and Gary. She looked like she wanted to speak up, but didn't dare. Ava could feel the weight of the room around her, the stares of other diners, some curious, others deliberately averting their eyes. Ava took a deep breath, her voice firm but controlled. "I've eaten here before," she said, her gaze never leaving Gary's. "I know you don't take reservations." Gary's face reddened, the veins in his temple becoming more pronounced. He leaned forward slightly, his posture aggressive. "Listen, lady," he snapped, his voice rising. "I'm the manager here, and I'm telling you, we're full. Now, either you leave, or I'll have you removed." The room seemed to hold its breath. Ava felt a flicker of anger rise within her, but she suppressed it. Instead, she stood her ground, her expression unyielding. She wasn't about to let him intimidate her. "Removed?" she said, her tone sharper now, cutting through the tension like a blade. "For what? Asking for a table like anyone else? Or is there another reason you don't want me here?" Gary faltered for a moment, his eyes darting away before snapping back to hers. The heat of the confrontation was palpable now, drawing the silent attention of everyone in the restaurant. Ava took a deep breath. She had dealt with people like Gary before, people who judged others based on the color of their skin rather than their character, but she wasn't one to back down. "I see what this is about," Ava said, her voice firm but calm. "And I won't be leaving. I'll wait right here until you find me a table." Gary scoffed. "You think you can just—" But Ava didn't let him finish. She pulled out her phone and said, "Let's see what the owner has to say about this." Gary froze for a moment, then laughed. "Go ahead. Call whoever you want. It won't change anything." Ava dialed a number and stepped aside, speaking quietly but confidently. Within a few minutes, she returned to her spot by the hostess stand. "You'll want to answer your phone," Ava said to Gary, her eyes locked on his. Gary's phone rang almost immediately. He glanced at the screen and hesitated before answering. "Hello?" he said, his tone suddenly unsure. The voice on the other end was loud enough for Ava to hear parts of the conversation. It was Mr. Thompson, the owner of Greenhaven Bistro. "Gary, what's going on there? I just got a call from one of our most valued customers, and she's telling me you refused her service. Is that true?" Gary stammered. I thought—" "You thought what?" Mr. Thompson interrupted. "That you could discriminate against someone in my restaurant? You have 30 seconds to apologize and seat her, or you're fired. Do you understand me?" Gary's face turned pale. He mumbled a quick "yes, sir," and hung up. Gary approached Ava with a forced smile. "I'm sorry for the misunderstanding, ma'am. Right this way." But Ava didn't move. She crossed her arms and said, "Not so fast. I want to hear the truth. Why did you refuse to seat me?" Gary looked around, clearly uncomfortable. The entire restaurant was now silent, all eyes on him. He opened his mouth to speak but couldn't find the words. Just then, Mr. Thompson himself walked through the door. He was a tall, kind-looking man in his 50s. He walked straight up to Ava and shook her hand. "Miss Johnson, I'm so sorry for what happened here today," he said. "This is not how we do business." Ava nodded but didn't look satisfied. "I appreciate that, Mr. Thompson, but this isn't just about me. How many other people have been treated like this?" The owner looked at Gary, who was now staring at the floor. "Gary," Mr. Thompson said, his voice steady but firm, laced with disappointment. "You've been with us for a long time, but this behavior, it's unacceptable and goes against everything this restaurant stands for. Consider this your last day." Gary's face turned pale, his earlier arrogance melting into panic. "Mr. Thompson, he started, his voice trembling, but Mr. Thompson raised a hand, cutting him off with quiet authority. "No excuses, Gary," he said, his tone unwavering. "I trusted you to run this place with integrity. Instead, you've embarrassed this establishment and hurt someone who deserves our respect. Pack your things and leave, now." Gary's shoulders slumped as the weight of his actions and their consequences hit him. He glanced around the room, but no one met his eyes. The staff stayed silent, the diners whispered among themselves, and Ava watched him with a calm, unflinching gaze. Without another word, Gary turned and walked out of the restaurant, his footsteps heavy with shame. As the tension in the room began to dissipate, Mr. Thompson turned to Ava, his expression softening into one of genuine remorse. "Miss Johnson," he said, his voice apologetic, "please allow me to personally take care of your meal today. I cannot apologize enough for what happened." Ava nodded graciously, appreciating his effort, but knowing that words alone weren't enough. She followed him to a table by the window, where the sunlight streamed in, casting a warm glow over the room. Throughout her meal, Mr. Thompson ensured Ava was treated like royalty, personally overseeing every detail. The staff, visibly moved by what had just transpired, went out of their way to serve her with care and respect. But for Ava, the moment wasn't just about her experience. It was about making sure this never happened to anyone else. After finishing her meal, she approached Mr. Thompson with an idea. "I appreciate how you handled the situation," she said, "but real change takes more than firing one person. Have you considered implementing diversity training for your staff? It could help prevent something like this from happening again." Mr. Thompson nodded thoughtfully. "I think that's an excellent idea. Would you be willing to help us get started?" Ava smiled. "I'd be happy to." In the weeks that followed, Ava worked closely with Mr. Thompson to design and implement a comprehensive diversity training program. She also helped him create a community outreach initiative to support underrepresented groups in the area. What began as an act of discrimination turned into an opportunity for growth and positive change, one that rippled far beyond the walls of the restaurant. And so, what started as a simple lunch became a powerful moment of transformation. One woman's courage and one phone call exposed the truth and sparked a chain reaction of change. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks.